Alex and I have been together for a little over 2 years, engaged for 3-ish months. Our families are pretty different. His whole family lives in the Midwest and mostly work blue collar, I hate that phrase, jobs, whereas I come from an East Coast family of, well, nerds. Nice nerds, but nerds nonetheless. My parents were both college professors, and my sister is a chemist. You get the idea. I've never viewed one kind of job lifestyle as better or smarter than another. Heck, growing up around a bunch of college professors, I wouldn't trust most doctors of philosophy to park my car without supervision. However, I know that society has certain stereotypes that are hard to shake. So I was initially understanding when Alex was nervous about meeting my family. We live on the West Coast, so we see his family a lot more often than we see mine. He didn't meet my parents until we'd been together almost a year, and we've only done maybe 4 trips visits with them in total. I'd hoped that first visit would put some of Alex's fears to rest. But if anything, the problem keeps getting worse. And that problem is, Alex gets in his head about feeling less intelligent than my family, which leads him to be uncharacteristically quiet and withdrawn around them, which, ironically, does make him come off as not so bright, or at least uninteresting, unfriendly, because he just sits there like a bump on a log, instead of engaging with anybody. Even when I try to draw him into the conversation by turning the topic to something he's interested in and asking him a question about it, he'll maybe say a sentence or two and clam up again. And it's not like my family sits around discussing deep philosophy and quantum physics all the time or whatever either. The majority of the time, we talk about pretty average, normal topics, current events, what's on TV, family gossip, whatever. And it's not like there's any lack of other things to talk about. Alex has a side business as a photographer, and my mom loves photography. But he won't even talk to her about it because my photos are probably way too amateurish for her. She tried to bring it up to him once, and he just made a nervous quip and then kind of left the conversation. And she never broached the topic again because, well, she's an awkward nerd and had no idea how to handle that reaction, understandably. It's extra frustrating because, as I've told him 1,000 times, his intelligence is one of the things I noticed first about him. He's absolutely not dumb in the slightest, and I hate to hear him say that about himself. We met in a book club, and I was blown away by his insights on what we were reading, and it's one of the first things we bonded over. I'm tired of making excuses for Alex when my family pulls me aside to ask concernedly if he's uncomfortable or dislikes them. There's only so many times I can say, "Oh no, we're just exhausted from the flight." Or it just takes him a little while to feel comfortable around new people when he's met them this many times. I want to be on his side, defend him. But at a certain point, it's honestly embarrassing. But I don't know how to tell him that without causing him to get even more nervous and tied in knots than he apparently already is. How can I resolve this without making him feel even worse about the whole thing? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I don't have any answers for you. This is just more of a post of solidarity because I'm in a similar boat with my significant other and family. My significant other also doesn't talk with my family unless they ask him a question directly, and then he gives super short answers of like 5 words or less. It doesn't matter if it's one-on-one, topics he's interested in, or if we do activities together. So I feel you because it's exhausting trying to be like a referee. And reassuring him that the family likes him while also constantly explaining to the family that he's not being rude, he's shy and anxious. I unfortunately haven't found a solution, but does your boyfriend act like that with his family as well? With your friends? I think my significant other has social anxiety, actually. He hardly speaks at his own family gatherings, too, which has helped me explain to my family that it's not just with them. Comment 2. I think you might be able to refocus him a bit by letting him know that his intense shyness is coming off as rudeness. And it's important to you that your partner and your family get along because they're both important to you. Maybe ask him if he believes you when you say your family wants to know him and they care about you. So they care about welcoming your partner? Like, can he at least take that first step in trusting you? On the other side, would it be appropriate to show your mom any of his photography with his permission and have her maybe take the first step to say how much she likes it? It might take repeated small little exposures to get both sides past the awkwardness. But I find that dealing with anxiety requires a lot of reinforcing validation that says no, The worst case actually won't happen if I speak up. Now for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. Last week, Alex and I went to visit my family on the East Coast. It was supposed to be a relaxing trip, but things took a turn. The first couple of days were okay, but Alex was still his usual quiet self around my family. I tried to get him to open up by talking about his photography, but he just gave short answers and then went silent again. My mom even showed him some of her own photos, hoping to spark a conversation, but he just nodded and said they were nice before retreating back into a shell. On the third day, my dad decided to have a barbecue and invited some of his colleagues over. I thought it would be a good idea for Alex to meet some new people in the more casual setting. But as soon as we got there, I could see Alex getting tense. He barely spoke to anyone and kept to himself most of the time. At one point, one of my dad's friends tried to engage him in a conversation about photography, but Alex just mumbled something and walked away. I could see the confusion on the guy's face, and it was really awkward. Later that evening, my sister pulled me aside and asked if everything was okay with Alex. She said he seemed really uncomfortable and distant. I tried to explain that he was just nervous, but she didn't seem convinced. She suggested that maybe Alex just didn't like being around my family, which hurt to hear. I knew she was just trying to help, but it made me feel even more frustrated. The next day, things got worse. My parents had planned a small dinner party with just the immediate family. I thought it would be a good opportunity for Alex to relax and get to know them better. But as soon as we sat down to eat, my dad started asking Alex about his job and his photography. Alex gave short, one-word answers and then went silent again. My dad tried to keep the conversation going, but it was clear that Alex wasn't interested in engaging. After dinner, my mom tried to talk to Alex about his photography again. She showed him some of her favorite photos and asked him for his opinion. Instead of engaging, Alex just shrugged and said he didn't know much about photography. My mom looked hurt, and I could see the disappointment in her eyes. It was really hard to watch. That night, I tried to talk to Alex about what was going on. I told him that my family really wanted to get to know him, and that it hurt me to see him so distant. He got defensive and said that he felt like he didn't belong, and that my family was judging him. I tried to reassure him that they weren't, but he wouldn't listen. He said he felt like an outsider, and that he didn't know how to fit in. The next day, things came to a head. My dad asked Alex to help him with a project in the garage. I thought it would be a good opportunity for them to bond, but it ended up being a disaster. My dad tried to show Alex how to use some of his tools, but Alex got frustrated and said he didn't know how to do anything. My dad tried to be patient, but I could see he was getting annoyed. Eventually, Alex just walked out of the garage and went back to our room. That evening, my parents sat me down and said they were concerned about Alex. They said they didn't understand why he was so distant, and that they felt like he didn't want to be part of the family. They asked if there was something they could do to make him feel more comfortable, but I didn't know what to say. I felt stuck between defending Alex and acknowledging that there was a problem. The next morning, Alex and I had a huge fight. He said he felt like I was always trying to change him and that he couldn't be himself around my family. I told him that I just wanted him to try and make an effort, but he said he couldn't do it. He said he felt like he was always being judged and that he couldn't handle the pressure. I didn't know what to say, and we ended up not speaking for the rest of the day. By the end of the week, things were really tense between us. We barely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was just to argue. I felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying not to say anything that would set him off. It was exhausting. I didn't know how to fix it. Looking back, I think a lot of Alex's issues stem from his upbringing. He grew up in a family where emotions weren't really talked about, and he was always expected to be tough and self-reliant. I think that's why he has such a hard time opening up and being vulnerable. He's always been the type to keep his feelings to himself and not ask for help, even when he needs it. I also think that part of the problem is that Alex feels like he has to prove himself to my family. He sees them as being more educated and successful, and I think that makes him feel insecure. He's always been a bit of a perfectionist, and I think he feels like he has to be perfect in order to be accepted. It's a lot of pressure, and I can see why he struggles with it. But at the same time, I can't keep making excuses for him. I love Alex, but I need him to meet me halfway. I need him to try and make an effort with my family, even if it's hard. I can't keep defending him and making excuses for his behavior. It's not fair to me, and it's not fair to my family. So, That's where things stand right now. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know that we have a lot of work to do if we're going to make this relationship work. Thanks for reading. Aita for confronting my partner about his lies and infidelity. My partner, 44-year-old male, and I, 35-year-old female, have been together for 6 years. We have 2 children, 4-year-old male and 3-year-old male. Overall, our relationship has been okay. Having children obviously takes a toll on the relationship, especially during the lockdowns with new babies and toddlers. We were friends for years before we got together, so we know each other well. He has always been quite distant, not prone to showing any affection, but since our youngest was born, well, since I was pregnant, things have gotten worse. We still get along very well, but the relationship side, from his side, has gone out of the window. He was unsupportive during the pregnancy, but that's another story. Our relationship has felt a lot like a situationship ever since. He says, "I love you," but never does anything to show it. Our intimacy life isn't great. It's when he wants it, and even then, maybe every few months. He's never had a very high intimacy drive, so I've never really questioned it. When I've tried to get him in the mood, I've been rebuffed. Don't get me wrong, we've still been getting along as well as we ever have, like best friends, and this feels like a knife in my chest. I've given up everything for him and our family. And around January, he was going for a meal with some friends. He pulled his phone out of his pocket to check something. And out flew a condom. We do not use condoms. He laughed it off and said he'd put it there for us to use. We'd been intimate that day, but we didn't use it. I tried not to think too much on it as I knew he'd had a box from before our eldest was born. So around 2019, 2020's time. When he went out that evening, he sent me his live location to show he was where he said he would be. But of course, I snooped and found 11 red packaged condoms from the same box, clearly, loose in his bedside drawer. So I thought, they must be from a 12 box, minus the one that flew out his pocket. 11 left. But the kicker? The expiration date is 2028. So the manufacturing date means they were no older than last year. I've been keeping an eye on his bedside drawer ever since, and the amount keeps changing. They're going down. Plus 3 different colored packaging ones in there, clearly from different packs, manufactured in 2021-ish. So gone are at least 4 of the red ones since January. At least 3 have gone from the drawer in the last month. He's been doing overtime at work recently, but hasn't really changed anything else in his routine. One went missing this past weekend, but I can't see when he had the opportunity to use it as we were mostly together, apart from him taking the kids out. I'm ashamed to say I went through his bag, his pockets, our bins, but there is no sign of it. I don't want to think he's cheating when he claims to be doing overtime, but I really can't see any other explanation for all of this. I don't really have anyone to talk to about this, which is why I'm turning to Reddit. What would you think in my shoes? I don't know how to address this situation. He owns our house and I have nowhere else to go. I don't know what to do or say. Do I confront him about the condoms? Should I straight up ask him who he's sleeping with? Or do I just leave it for the sake of our children? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Men will say things like, "When would I even have time to cheat?" to your face while having full-blown second lives and families that they are somehow able to hide. I am an intimacy worker, and married men book appointments during work hours all the time to hide it from their spouses. It is easy enough to say they have a doctor's appointment to their boss or working overtime to their partners. This really sucks. I am sorry you are going through it. Comment 2. Don't let him brainwash you into thinking this is all in your head. It is not. It is a valid reason to be concerned. Tell him you want to talk and have a conversation about it. It seems like you are pretty close to not wanting to be with him anyway. Hopefully it won't be too hard on you if you guys end it. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So 3 days ago, I decided I couldn't keep this to myself any longer. I needed to talk to him about the condoms. I waited until the kids were asleep and we were both settled in the living room. I brought it up as calmly as I could, mentioning that I had noticed the condoms and asking if there was something he needed to tell me. He looked genuinely surprised at first, but then his expression changed to something I couldn't quite read. He said he had been meaning to talk to me about it, but didn't know how to bring it up. He admitted that he had been feeling disconnected from me for a while and had been considering seeing a therapist to sort out his feelings. He said the condoms were a way for him to feel prepared in case he decided to be intimate with me again, but he hadn't been able to bring himself to do it. He swore up and down that he wasn't cheating, but I could tell there was more to the story. The next day, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I called his workplace to verify his overtime hours. To my shock, they told me he hadn't been working any extra hours. My heart sank. I felt betrayed and confused. I didn't confront him right away. I needed time to process everything. Later that evening, I noticed he was acting more distant than usual. He was glued to his phone, which was unusual for him. I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach. I decided to check his phone while he was in the shower. I found messages from a woman I didn't recognize. They were mostly casual, but there were a few that hinted at something more. My heart was pounding as I read through them. I confronted him as soon as he came out of the shower. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. He admitted that he had been talking to this woman for a few months, but insisted it was just a friendship. He said he met her at a work event and they had hit it off. He claimed they hadn't done anything physical, but I didn't know what to believe anymore. The next day, I decided to reach out to the woman. I found her on social media and sent her a message, asking if she knew my partner was in a relationship. She responded quickly, saying she had no idea and that he had told her he was single. She apologized profusely and said she would cut off contact with him immediately. I felt a mix of relief and anger. Relief that she wasn't a willing participant in his deceit, but anger at him for lying to both of us. That evening, I confronted him again. I told him I had spoken to the woman and that she had no idea he was in a relationship. He looked defeated and finally admitted that he had been feeling trapped in our relationship. He said he loved me and the kids, but felt like he had lost himself in the process. He admitted that he had been considering leaving, but didn't know how to do it without hurting us. I was devastated. I felt like my world was falling apart. I asked him why he didn't talk to me about his feelings sooner. He said he was afraid of my reaction and didn't want to hurt me. I told him that by keeping it a secret, he had hurt me even more. We both sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation hanging over us. The next day, I decided to take some time for myself. I went to stay with a friend for a couple of days to clear my head. While I was there, I thought a lot about our relationship and what I wanted for myself and the kids. I realized that I couldn't stay in a relationship where I felt constantly betrayed and unsure of my partner's feelings. When I returned home, I told him that I needed some space to figure things out. I suggested we try a trial separation to see if we could work on ourselves individually before deciding the future of our relationship. He agreed, saying he thought it was a good idea. We decided he would stay at a friend's place for a while, and we would take turns caring for the kids. During this time, I started seeing a therapist to help me process everything. I realized that I had been neglecting my own needs and desires for the sake of the relationship and the kids. I needed to rediscover who I was outside of being a partner and a mother. It was a difficult journey, but I knew it was necessary. As for him, he also started seeing a therapist. He told me he wanted to work on his issues and become a better person for himself and for us. I appreciated his honesty and willingness to change, but I knew it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been broken. In the meantime, we focused on co-parenting and making sure the kids were okay. They were too young to understand what was happening, but we tried to keep things as normal as possible for them. It was hard, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Thanks for reading. Aita for telling my girlfriend to get on board with my foster kids. Or get out my girlfriend, M. And I met when we were at university almost 10 years ago. We had been friends on and off since then, but it was never like we were super close. We met again at a New Year's party in 2023, and we started talking more, and eventually we started dating. I'm a foster parent. My parents were one when I was growing up, and once I reached the age to qualify, I trained to become one myself. I've been fostering since I was about 22 years old. I currently foster 3 boys. The older 2 are biological brothers and moved in with me early in 2022. But the youngest one, 11, has lived with me since June 2019. This is something that I obviously made very clear to M when we started dating, to which she had always been incredibly supportive. I introduced her as my girlfriend to them about 6 months ago. I know that took me a long time, but I'm super cautious with introducing new people to them, especially considering some of their pasts surrounding step-parents. She never rushed me into introducing them and has never tried to force a relationship with them. Looking back, I don't know if she has even tried to form a solid relationship with them at all. 11 Inches has been moved to a long-term placement with me, which is 2 steps below adoption. It means he is never going to be removed from my household or reintroduced back into his bio family. He is my son, calls me dad, etc. He hadn't been in contact with his bio family for over 2 years and has been really wanting to get in contact with his mom. I have been trying my hardest to arrange this for him, but his bio mom just hasn't been willing. Since he's moved in with me, she's had 3 more children who have all stayed living with her. This is something 11 really struggles with. He has such complex feelings of abandonment that I couldn't even begin to unpick them here. But I have been working to build his self-worth back up. It has been a long road with so many ups and downs, but I feel like I am getting somewhere with him finally. Me and his social worker finally managed to arrange contact with his bio mom, and she agreed to meet him in person. This has been what he has been begging for years. It was arranged for last Sunday. Looking back, she immediately seemed off after I told her. When I asked, she just told me that she had had a bad day at work, even though she seemed fine prior. About 5 days after I told her when the contact was arranged for, she asked to meet up for a romantic dinner. I asked my mom to have the boys for the evening and met her at her favorite restaurant. And she told me she had booked a romantic lodge trip. I was initially excited, but I found out she had booked it for the same weekend 11 was meeting his bio mom. I told her I wouldn't be able to go, that I needed to be with 11 because I knew that he was going to have such a hard time processing his emotions and thoughts after his contact, and that he would just need that support. She went off on me, saying how I always prioritize the boys and never her, and how I should be happy that she booked and paid for the getaway even though I make more money than her. She said I should get my mom to do the contact or ask their agency to arrange someone. I said no. I wanted to be there to support 11. She said something along the lines of, "You won't be able to do this when we have a child." We ended up having a huge argument. She left the restaurant and then texted me some pretty nasty things later. And then yesterday she messaged just normal messages, as if nothing happened. But I haven't responded. I've come to realize that she doesn't consider my boys as genuinely part of my family. She doesn't see me as a dad. She sees me as a babysitter. I don't want this relationship to be over. Genuinely, I love her. I'm the type of guy who wears his heart on his sleeve. And I have felt so depressed since the fight. And it was even worse that I just had to almost wear an emotional mask for 11 the past week because he has been so depressed after seeing his mom that I don't want him to see me depressed. Where do I go from here? Please don't give advice of just break up, because I know that's an option, but I don't want to take it. It's hard finding people with what I do for a living, and I feel so broken that I thought I had found someone real. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You're right. She doesn't see your kids as a priority or equal to the hypothetical kids you may have together. Is that what you want for your kids? You're a dad. Those kids come first, and they must be treated equally to any biological kids you may have in the future. If she's not on board with that, she's the wrong woman. She put you in the position to choose between her and your son, and you chose correctly. Now she's mad about it. This is no different than if you were a single mom, and the advice is always that a partner who doesn't treat your kids right is the wrong partner. Comment 2. You claim she is incredibly supportive of you fostering, and then prove through the rest of the post that she actually doesn't, and anything she has said is only lip service. How can you not want to break up with someone that said the things you say she says? You love an image she showed you, and when the chips were down, her real self was revealed. I would never allow someone that said those things around my kids ever again. Now for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So, after the fight with Em, I decided to take a few days to cool off and think things through. I didn't respond to her texts right away because I needed some space to figure out what I wanted to do. Meanwhile, I focused on being there for 11, who was really struggling after meeting his bio mom. He was quiet and withdrawn, and I could tell he was processing a lot of heavy emotions. I tried to be as supportive as possible, giving him the space to talk if he wanted to, but not pushing him too hard. 3 days after the argument, Em showed up at my house unannounced. She said she wanted to talk and apologize for how she acted. She admitted that she felt insecure about her place in my life and was worried that she would always come second to the boys. I could see she was genuinely upset, but I also knew that this was a deeper issue that wouldn't be resolved with just an apology. I told her that I understood her feelings, but that the boys were a non-negotiable part of my life. I explained that fostering was something I was deeply committed to, and that it wasn't just a job for me, it was my life. She seemed to get it, but I could tell she was still struggling with the idea. We decided to take a break from each other to give us both some time to think. During this break, I had a long conversation with my mom. She reminded me of a time when I was a kid and we had a foster child who was really difficult. My parents had to make a lot of sacrifices, and it put a strain on their relationship. But they stuck it out because they believed in what they were doing. My mom told me that if Em couldn't accept the boys as part of our family, then maybe she wasn't the right person for me. It was hard to hear, but it made a lot of sense. Meanwhile, 11 was having a tough time at school. He got into a fight with another kid who made a comment about his bio mom. The school called me, and I had to go pick him up. On the way home, he finally opened up about how he felt abandoned and unloved by his bio mom. It broke my heart to hear him say that, but I reassured him that he was loved and that he was part of our family no matter what. That night, I got a call from Em. She said she'd been doing a lot of thinking and wanted to meet up to talk things through. I agreed, but I was cautious. We met at a coffee shop, and she told me that she'd been talking to a therapist about her insecurities and fears. She said she realized that she had been unfair to me and the boys, and that she wanted to work on being more supportive. I told her that I appreciated her honesty and willingness to work on things, but that it would take time for me to trust that she was truly committed to being part of our family. We agreed to take things slow and see how it went. I also suggested that she spend more time with the boys to build a relationship with them, and she agreed. Over the next few weeks, Em made a real effort to connect with the boys. She took them out for ice cream, helped them with their homework, and even attended one of their soccer games. The boys were a bit hesitant at first, but they slowly started to warm up to her. I could see that she was trying, and it meant a lot to me. One evening, Em and I were sitting on the couch after the boys had gone to bed. She told me that she had been thinking about what I said about fostering being my life. She admitted that she had always seen it as something temporary, like a job that I would eventually move on from. But now she understood that it was a lifelong commitment, and that if she wanted to be with me, she had to accept that. I could see the sincerity in her eyes, and it gave me hope. We still had a lot of work to do, but I felt like we were on the right track. I told her that I loved her and that I wanted to make it work, but that we needed to be honest with each other about our feelings and fears. As for 11, he was slowly starting to come out of his shell again. He was still dealing with a lot of emotions, but he seemed to be doing better. I made sure to spend extra time with him, just talking and hanging out. I wanted him to know that he was loved and that he had a place in our family. Looking back, I realized that this whole situation had brought up a lot of unresolved issues for both Em and me. It was a wake-up call that we needed to communicate better and be more understanding of each other's feelings. It wasn't easy, but I felt like we were making progress. Thanks for reading. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.